right, should be good to go.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Hey, everybody. I think we can start. Um, so, hi. Are you guys okay? You ate? All right. My name is Christian Mulumba. I work for Mercy Corp. And I'm here with our colleagues from our consortium, Nancy, she's right there, and then Kelsey, and then Caleb. So the three of them, they work for Tetra Tech, but in Eastern DRC, we work in the same consortium. That's why we're here as a team. I want to thank you guys for coming for this session today. We just want to go through some quick challenges that we've seen from our implementation in Eastern DRC based on the topic of this of today, which is the situation in crisis. So this session will be more about a learning activity where we want you guys to participate, to be involved, because as this program is still ongoing, we want to collect enough information, enough evidence that can guide in our decision making, and what a great platform to collect from great minds like you. So, like I was saying, we wanted to, our topic in this side event, we'll be looking at how we bring together all the actors, the stakeholders, the government, civil society, communities, private sector, and everybody to strengthen the WASH service in DRC. And that's the project that we're working on. And our program is USAID's Sustainable Water and Sanitation System Activity. It's a 5 years project. It's being implemented in the Eastern DRC. Like I said before, by a consortium of 3 organizations, Mercy Corps, Synergy, and Tetra Tech. And then, like I already presented my contributor and my team, we're going to move straight to the point because, like I said, we really want to focus on the learning aspect of it. So for us, we have 2 major objectives for this session. And the first one, like I said, we want to address some of the challenges that we faced in our implementation. And at the same time, we want to fill some gap, some knowledge gap, and collect some learning from you and everybody so that we can find ways to improve the collaborative approaches that we're implementing in Eastern DRC. So, DRC is that big country that is always in the middle of Africa, sitting right there, and is the 3rd largest country in Africa, actually the 2nd. Now the South Sudan is being divided, it's being cut from Sudan, so now it's the 2nd largest. And what we do in DRC is we're working to improve access to potable water and safe sanitation, and we do that by developing the market sector. That's the way our program is set up, and we have 2 major provinces in which we work. We work in North Kivu, and we work in South Kivu. Yes, so those are our 2 provinces, and you can see the small dot. I'm not sure if you can see the words, but we have the first site is up there in the north, This one, it's called Beni. And then we have Sake and Bweremana. Goma is the capital, I can say, of the North Kivu province. And Bukavu is somewhere here, it's also the capital of the South Kivu province. And some of our sites, Uvira, so you can see how the sites are being separated on a geographical level. So why we picked those sites? It all goes with the context that we found in Eastern DRC. And actually, when we started this program, we used to say Eastern DRC is coming out of years or decades of armed conflict and civil unrest, and that was the big word that we used when we were preparing our project document. But if you go back to Eastern DRC right now, I'm still in the same situation. So sometimes we face the provinces are coming out of conflict, and then they go back into conflict, and we have to keep on implementing our project, and it's really hard. And this civil unrest has caused like a massive displacement of people, which you'll see like most of the time, people who live in these areas, they will run away from their homes because it's not safe for them. And they will try as much as possible to come stay around the cities which is being considered to be a bit safe. And with this, there will be a growth in population, actually. And there will be high demand into water and sanitation service, which the government is unable to provide because it wasn't planned. It's something that happens, and this has been happening for years, and until today it's still happening. Recently we had some conflict going on in Eastern DRC, and another group of people left and fled their homes to come and stay around these cities. And with that, we found the government found itself in a situation where they cannot accommodate all these population when it comes to providing safe sanitation and potable water. And that's why we came in to try to see how we can support. So after conducting like a number of assessments and studies, we realized that our implementation is going to face some quite tough challenges. And that's the reason why we wanted to bring these challenges here and see how all of us can help find some good ideas to go forward. The first challenge is the humanitarian aspect of the response to the crisis in DRC. When we're talking about humanitarian aspect, we see the emergency assistance. People have fled their houses. They've gone toward the safe cities. So the whole peri-urban area is full of people who need water and safe sanitation. So what we do, we bring emergency response. And with emergency response, there's no sustainability most of the time. But what we've seen in Eastern DRC, there is no sustainability. We build some boreholes or probably some tap stand so that we can try as much as possible to just give water to the internal displaced people, or we'll do the water tracking. And then, but when you look at the long term, this system is not built under any sustainable provision. And this is like the major crisis that we have, which when you bring water like that to those populations, they tend to believe that water service is free. And then next time when you come with a development project and you say, oh, actually, service provision of water should be charged, already you're creating conflict in people's mindset. And so it's really hard to try to make the community to understand that you came here probably it's the same organization anyway. You came as a humanitarian intervention, and you gave us water. Now you're coming as a development program, the same organization, and you say we need to pay the service of water. How do we understand that? Challenge number one, so it's really tricky. The second challenge that we saw in our studies and assessment is the level of how the government actually is involved in implementing the water law. The water law is it's not really new in the DRC, but it came up like in 2015. And with the water law, the measures of the policies to implement that water law came later. And so we face ourselves with the challenges of how the implementation is going to go. And the government is planning to find ways to implement this. How do we make the politics? How do we make the policy to make the water law become effective? And who is in charge of this sector? If you were in some of the events that we had yesterday, we had questions where they say, how do we do this when you have 8 ministries that says that I'm in charge of the water law? You have the Ministry of Water that says I'm the Ministry of Water and Water Resources, so I should be in charge. The Rural Environment Ministry will be like, actually, I'm in charge of the rural area, so it's me. The Ministry of Planning will be like, come on, guys, I'm planning everything, so it should be me. So you can imagine this whole thing, the way it goes. It's like one of the major challenges, and we're trying to see how to bring together all these stakeholders to solve this particular issue. Also with that, like I said before, is the limited knowledge of the water law by the communities. People don't really know what's the duties or what the rights in terms of the water sector. They have no idea. And then when you come up with activities in those areas, the only thing that you get is, I just want water. Everything else doesn't matter to me. So how do you want it? What are your duties? What are your responsibilities? What does the water law says about that? Nobody's aware of that. So that also creates a big challenge, because some of the actors that work in the area, they will use that against the communities. So there's now, with that, come the interventions, and there's a perception. The communities are thinking that capacity development itself doesn't bring any development, doesn't bring any change. There is a deep perception that the only time I want you to talk to me about water is when I see water. Not when you come to me and say, I want to give you capacity on how you can evolve or work. That doesn't make sense in people's head. I want to see I want the tangible aspect of water for me to believe that there's capacity improvement. And that's one of the big challenges that we're facing. And a lot of resources are required to optimize the existing system, unfortunately. The financing gap in this sector is really huge, and it really needs to be met somehow, so that people can have the water that they need for their daily lives. So again, we've been talking, like especially this morning, about community-based management, because with the actions that humanitarian responses do, is they can build a system, a localized system, and they're going to give it back for management to the local community or something like that. And we've seen that this system in DRC doesn't really work. Actually, in the Eastern DRC, it doesn't really work. Because first, the water law doesn't see those community-led management as legal. They have to go through different processes to become legal. And those processes are really hard for them. And some of them don't even feel the need of doing so because they will tell you, like, for us to go through this process, we have to spend a lot of money and we don't see the added value. So they don't want to go through that system. Now, it creates another issue because if you want to professionalize the water sector, how do you do this with community-based management of the water supply and people don't want to be legal? They don't want to have the right document because those documents are so expensive or they cannot afford it. So those were some of the major challenges that we face going forward. And I'm gonna take a break for a couple of moments and ask if we have questions. Got my colleagues are with me and they can help answer. Yes.
I want to understand better what is meant by community-based service. Like, I guess I should introduce myself first. I'm Christine Marie George, and I'm a professor at Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
And we work in South Kivu.
Yeah.
So in Mulumba and in Kivu. And so I just wanted to understand a little bit better what's meant by community-based service delivery. Because I know that's done in many different ways by many different organizations in Eastern PRC. So I'm just trying to understand better what that means.
Okay. Nancy, do you want to go for it?
Should you repeat it for the people who are
Yes.
virtual?
Yes, please. Yeah, if she can repeat the question.
So my question was, what is meant by community-based service delivery? And I mentioned that I'm at Johns Hopkins. I'm a professor there. We conduct research in Bukavu, Malungu, and South Kivu province. And we know every day there's all these different organizations that are coming in and out and doing different types of community-based service delivery. So it seems like it means something different for different people. Yeah. And in the Bukavu context, as you know, there's even the community health workers that are embedded there, and they're doing their work. And so I'm just trying to understand better what's meant by that, and that they have no legal status. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Nancy? You can go straight away.
Normally what we found in North Kivu and South Kivu is that a lot of the projects were constructed by development partners during emergency. So normally what they do is they hand over to the community. And the community is like, okay, so who is the best person to lead this? So they do a committee. It's actually water committees, community level water management committees. In South Kivu, they call them COGEP. And they also have an ASUREP model, which is actually a water user association. But the issue is that most of those ones that call themselves ASUREP or water user association actually don't have registration. So they are actually, they're just embedded in the community. Yeah. That okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Nancy. Is there any question? Any other question? Yes.
My name is John Akudago from Habitat for Humanity. I think in a conflict area it's very difficult to really have leadership. But I wanted to know, apart from the fact that you go there to organize the communities, do you have traditional leadership that exists in those areas, and what do they do? Do they contribute to managing these facilities? And is there any way that we development partners can bring them in to play a role, since the government is almost a failed system? Maybe the traditional leadership or clan leadership might step in to help.
My name is David Cheshire, Catholic Relief Services. Thanks for the presentation. In your intro, you said this program was designed based on the experience in the region, knowing very well that you switch between stable and unstable environments. So I was just wondering whether previous programs or entities, as part of their end of project reports, came up with some recommendations to deal with that shift, given that that area is now sort of a chronic emergency context.
Thank you. Let me start with the one about, where did I put that? About the traditional leadership. Yeah. And we've been working with the kingdoms. So in North Kivu and South Kivu, we have what they call a shepherdry or a kingdom, and they have a mwami or a king. So the central government actually recognizes their local level. They call them the centralized territorial entities, or ETDs. So they are very instrumental in the work that we are doing, but their effectiveness, of course, varies from one area to the next, depending on personalities, you know. Yeah, so you may find that in one area they are very strong, and maybe in another area they are not. But basically what we are doing is also building their capacity to take up that role. So that really helps. So the water law actually recognizes the national, the national government, the provincial government, and the local government. And they have given them roles that we are now encouraging them to take up. So that is part of our intervention. Did we know that the area is unstable? Yes, we did. But we thought that it is more stable now, that these things evolve. So what we did is we considered it a risk that we have to address, and we are doing our best under the circumstances. So initially we thought it's over, but then it keeps coming back. So we look for ways and means of working within that risk. That's the best we can do. Yeah.
I asked that question because in your intro you said you were looking for ideas to sort of improve the program based on the context analysis. So if you are aware of the context in terms of movement of people between stable and unstable environment, and then you know the direction of the movement, for example, to urban settings, and that inflow, outflow gives you a pattern, that could also, in a way, you know, in terms of scenario planning, know where should there be conflict that will ignite another pattern of movement, where the direction of people will be, to sort of look at providing more stable infrastructure in those places in anticipation of movement. So that's just an idea.
Okay, that's not. Thank you.
You want to do that?
What?
Okay, let me try to answer the question, because a lot of actually what we are going into is similar situation where people moved into an area and everybody came and constructed something and then left. I don't think that is going to stop. It's going to continue happening as long as there is instability or insecurity. But what we are trying to do is to empower the mandated institutions to actually transition the emergency response to sustainable water service systems. So I think beyond that, we may not be in control of whether, initially we thought like with the East African community coming in, when DRC joined the East African community, that the issue would end, but it hasn't. And it is actually beyond our control. So we do the best we can within the water law that is now in place. And for us, I'll talk about that tomorrow again. It's an opportunity to actually change things in the water sector. Is that okay?
You know the context better than we do.
Yes.
But it's just because you can
Yeah.
see a map showing a relatively stable area,
Uh-huh.
and then the Bukavu area where
Mhm.
migration or movement towards those more stable communities are.
Mhm.
What I was just trying to point out is if that trend of rural urban areas is consistent
Yeah.
over time.
Can I tell you something? Even I, when I wake up in the morning, sometimes I get some message from the security team. Today is really bad, so don't move towards a certain area. That's how it is. And maybe I'll take a whole 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and it will be fine. And then one day again, people are demonstrating, maybe against the East African community, or maybe against the MONUSCO, or against something else. And it's completely out of our control. So what we showed is people, when that happens, people actually feel safer in the towns. And again, it's like the cycle starts all over again. But we believe and we pray that things are going to stabilize. Yeah.
Yeah, even when it comes to those towns, yeah, we say those towns are relatively safe. It doesn't mean that they are also safe. Because sometimes even those towns, they get attacked. And you get in a situation where people can, they can say, okay, we're running toward Goma. Now Goma is being attacked, let's go somewhere else. So there's not like a set pattern. You say I can follow this pattern because the movement is always like this and like it's like that. It's not. The only patterns that has been a bit consistent is that when people come in the peri-urban areas, they tend to settle. If it's possible, they tend to settle. But whenever the situation, because you need to also, when you're for example, for the North Kivu, when you look at the geographic of North Kivu, apart from all this security situation, you also have the volcano. And people they know that this volcano is still active and it can erupt anytime. So if I stay in the Ndirangu because I ran from the war from a village, if it's not another armed conflict, maybe it's the volcano that will kick me out. So there's always those many situations that makes the area a bit difficult to say, let's have this pattern for development. Most of the actors, they tried. We have what we call the master plan for North Kivu, where the government and all those the actors, the private sector and the public sector and development actors, they tried to see what would be the best way to plan for water and sanitation. And they have this huge plan that they ask everybody, try as much as possible to tap into this when you're trying to do your development support. But it doesn't always go like that, because some will not even come in that area. Like last time when we had the first forced migration, people they left the rain toward what we call Ndirangu in North Kivu, and the volcano kicked them out, so they went toward Masisi. Now there's a war in Masisi. They are coming back toward the other side of Goma. So you see, like, it's really hard now to try to connect to the master plan that we have put in place. So those are the many challenges that we have. And the idea here is, so with all those challenges, how do we bring together all those stakeholders and see how we strengthen this? Because theoretically speaking, it makes sense, but in practice, it's a bit harder. Yeah.
And tomorrow we'll have another We'll have a verbal presentation that will follow up on this one, and probably to clarify a few more things. Like, for example, in some of those areas, we do have a private operator who is making things happen. And we are praying that once things get easier, then he can also like expand to the other areas, or he can support the community-based models to actually improve the way they do business. Yeah, so maybe a little bit more tomorrow, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Oh, it's afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Pumeza. Sorry, I had to think about that. I'm Pumeza from International Budget Partnership in South Africa. I'm interested in some of the examples of how you guys bring the different stakeholders together, because that's one of the things that a lot of us in civil society are starting to explore. How do you bring practitioners, civil society actors, community-based organizations, and government in the same room to start thinking about development? If one or two examples, I know it's hard, but I would love to hear a few examples on how you guys have done that, and maybe we can learn something from there too.
Okay. Oh yeah, let's take the other question and then we can answer both.
Yeah, my name's Rachel. I work with Tier Fund. We have quite a big presence in Eastern DRC as well. And yeah, just following on from that question, I would love to hear how you managed to bring government together without funding them to come together and for their input, if you managed to do that, or perhaps there's others incentives that you can introduce to bring them together. Thanks.
Okay. You want to start? Okay.
All right, let me say, I'm in the field a lot. That's why I'm standing up a lot. So part of our, the way we've designed our project, we have a very strong sector relations and governance, stakeholder relations and governance component that actually goes ahead of all of us just to actually check what is the situation, who is out there, what are they doing, how can we bring them together, and then create forums for them to meet. At first, of course, it was very difficult to bring the governing entities and the water operators and the civil society and the community groups and the consumers in the same forum. So in the beginning, it was kind of not very easy because the civil society guys would probably shout, "What are you doing here? Why are you taking so long? Why are you only training us? Why don't you give us infrastructure?" All those things. And then probably the local government and the provincial government would look at us, because at that point in time, they probably didn't know their respective roles and responsibilities. So we were there now telling them it's not business as usual anymore. We have a Water Act that gives respective roles to everybody, and you are all sitting at the same table to learn about the water law. So this is your role, this is how you relate with this person, this is what the law says. And they were like, oh, that's interesting. So they started getting together, and kind of government also felt like we were also really assisting them to explain things to the community. So they started becoming also very committed, but we told them, okay, you're learning and doing on the go. So if you don't learn, then it's going to be very difficult for you. So they learn and do on the go. And we support them, and they're very open. Of course, with civil society, you have to be very patient, because they'll shout you down. And then you're like, oh my God, do I want to come here again? And you're like, yeah. If you want change, you've got to come again and again and again. So that is how we were able to bring them together in the first place, and it continues to work. Did I get the other question?
Yeah, so I can take that one. So just the way Nancy mentioned, what we did is we try as much as possible to divide our approach into three. The first one is we need to understand the water sector and help stakeholders understand the water sectors, because many of them, they can be even major actors and they don't understand. Like one example Nancy mentioned, some of the chiefs of the kingdoms, they were not even aware of their role as stated by the law to be the owners of any water infrastructure built in their constituency. They were not aware of that. So the first approach is to bring that understanding of the sector to the local actors, so that they can be able to see where they stand, each one of them. The second approach was to improve the enabling environment, because when we see the enabling environment, we see everybody else. The ETD, like we said, are they now taking up their roles? The community, like she mentioned, the civil society. Do you understand where you need to, and if you have to put pressure, how do you direct that pressure? And we looked also at the private sector, because the private sector will be like, I'm not making money out of this, so I'm not giving them any money. But we try as much as possible to create that situation where they can be part of the conversation. And some of this has led to the government also taking some ownership. Now they've started organizing sessions that, for example, they have a platform where they meet every quarter, and they call it like a learning knowledge platform in the water sector. And they try as possible to invite every stakeholders from academia, private sector, development organizations, so that these discussions that we have can also be done at a local level. So that's one of the action that we really try to push, to keep them talking to one another. Because, for example, we will see the community, the next thing that they will do, because they grow up in a situation of war, the only thing that they can do is protest. And when they protest in a harsh way. They destroy property, they do everything. But now we try to bring them to come to the table with the people you want to talk to. There are different platforms that you can communicate, and also try to bring the governments to understand that these people, they need water, and they need you to do your role. So how do you address their demand? And even if you cannot address it, who do you partner with so that you can address those demands? And the third approach was to build models that are economically viable, so that the market system delivery can be done. And like Nancy said, this is one of the key presentations that we'll be having tomorrow, and she will talk about that. So it's this whole thing. It's not like a particular activity that's being done. We can say like, okay, in this platform, the whole come together. Because sometimes it's really hard. Even when we organize community consultations, people will come to the community consultation, but everybody has their own agenda, and it can really be hard. So what we did is we noticed that every time that this is being done from a community perspective, it leads to result. We want the development, what do you call the ETD? Entity, yes. We want the chief to take ownership and organize these community conversations. And as we can come in to support, but we want them to take that ownership, which was not done before. So it's a mixture of all those approaches that are now started giving up like a good result, and we think we'll continue in that way. Yes.
Yeah, sorry to giving you more listen, but I'm just thinking, and I know this is a conflict-prone area, and I know in some countries in Africa there've been some issues where like football teams are going to play, and the entire country stops everything and they want to support their national team. So is there something that is peculiar within the area there that can be a symbol of love for everybody, that you could bring them in to play a role? And then the second one is, in this current situation, how do you bring the youth in to really begin to take their own future into their hands, instead of relying on my father is against this man and my mother is against this woman and we can never come together? I think the youth might have much more wider perspective because of other international influence. And so I just wanted to know whether you use some of those things in your daily activities, cultural activities that will bring people together, soccer or national team or something. I don't know.
Good idea. We are not there yet. I've heard about football for wash in some other organization I worked for, and it really helps. Maybe we'll get there, but we do have a gender and youth component that is actively like rallying the women and youth, like women and girls, because they are the ones who fetch water a lot. And the young men also, because they are the guys in civil society, they are the ones who will throw stones if stones have to be thrown. But basically, they've come up and they've really appreciated what we are doing. I remember this time that our organization received a letter from civil society, and they were like, you guys are saying our area is insecure, so you're pulling out. And we will not allow you to pull out because we need water. We are also human beings. So if you don't give us water, we are going to demonstrate inside your offices. And we were like, okay, this is a difficult one. So we were like, so of course you talk to management, and the management says, okay, give us a solution. And our solution again was the Mwami, the king, because he knows these people. So we talked to the Mwami, and he was able to organize the team for us. And we explained everything to them in a forum where they were also sitting with the provincial entity. And they explained what their issues are, and we explained what we are going to do and why we are not doing it right then. And we explained that as soon as things become better, we are coming back. And we have come back. And they are very pleased. So it's a way, we have to find a way of really responding based on the local context. And the context says, you've got to be persuasive. You can't just say, okay, you want to demonstrate? Come and demonstrate. You're like, let's go and talk to these guys. And these are now the same people that speak up for us, that this is a serious organization, it's no longer emergency, it is development, yeah. So we do that a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, I just to build on what you're saying. That's a very interesting point, and I like the idea of using the king. In African society and in these type of settings where I come from as well, I think apart from the king, there are also some people in those communities that have a lot of influence, indirect, especially with the context that is so complicated, that can ensure that certain things are done. So if, for example, the king's word is not taken and communities go to strike again, I want to believe there are certain people in community that can actually speak to these people for them to be able to sort of get back to what the basics. So maybe just to explore that, because that normally works as another alternative to using the king that you have to make sure that your projects are actually done. So
Thank you. Thank you. We'll try that too.
Thank you. So this is also interesting for me, even working in Eastern DRC for 7 years, a lot of things that you brought up I wasn't aware of. And I wanted to know if there was a stakeholder mapping exercise that you've done and if you can share that, because I think that would be valuable for people like me conducting research in partnership with communities in DRC, because we hear the community's perspective, but we're not hearing your perspective. And to them, it seems like a lot of organizations are coming in and out, and there's a lack of sustainability there. Like a good example is with chlorine tablets. So one organization would provide chlorine tablets for one dosing, then another organization would come in a different dosing, and then there would be just complete confusion. People have chlorine tablets, all different types, and don't know how to use them. So I think for me, having a better understanding of the stakeholders and their different roles and learning more about the water law that you're referring to and how it's being implemented in the Eastern DRC context would be really valuable.
Yes, yes. We have a stakeholder mapping. Actually, within an activity like this one, that's one key activity that we really want to focus on, because, like we said, with all these movements, stakeholders keep on changing. So instead of making like a one-time thing, we told ourselves we need to have like a recurrent activity so that we can be able to update this mapping and see which stakeholders, actually like the point that he just made, which stakeholder exactly, apart from those ones that we targeted at the beginning, can we go to when the situation is becoming where it is. So yes, we do have a stakeholder mapping, and I'll be glad to share it with you. And then we're still updating it every year, so so that we can keep tab of who's in, who's out. Like for example, sometimes we say that we have these youth groups that can be really powerful in an area. Sometimes they can decide and say, tomorrow the city does not going to work. We don't want anybody to do anything because we want to protest, and everybody will listen to them. This same organization, probably a year later, won't have that power, probably because one youth did something that the others didn't appreciate, and it changes. So that's the context that we're evolving in, and now we keep updating our stakeholder mapping, and I'll be really be glad to share that.
There was just one point I wanted to add on in terms of the stakeholders, and maybe specifically the number of stakeholders we end up dealing with at one time. And one of the reasons we really talk about this conflict, post-conflict context that we're working with is it really comes into play in terms of the service delivery models we're trying to implement. So, you know, I think we severely underestimated what we were going to find when we did some of these initial studies. And so what has happened as a result of all these emergency response programs is you have multiple water committees that have been set up, because usually when they come in for emergency response, it's limited to these small areas, and they put in place a water service system, and then they hand it over to a committee. But when we went to, for example, Kivu and Katana, I mean, we really viewed that as what we were calling one single site, and we were going to come in and we were going to find a service delivery model for Kivu and Katana. Well, when we did our assessment, there was something like 10 to 13 community managers that had been in place. And so these, when we talk about putting in a new model, you also have to talk about displacing these people who have been operating there and feel a lot of ownership over these systems. So this is what we're going to get into a little bit more in our discussion tomorrow, although we're really just going to crack the surface. But just to say, there's a lot of stakeholders.
Hi, my name is Ruthie Rosenberg, and I work with Sanergy on a different component of the SWASA program. And I guess, one point I'd like to share, just based on our experience, Sanergy operates primarily in Kenya. And I think one of the things that we've found is that we've been operating services for about 12 years, and we work in informal settlements. And what we find is the reason that we're able to operate is that we are able to adapt, that we have leadership and partners and funders who are really patient and flexible and who trust us, and who basically say, like, we get it that what you might have told us in a report last year, that this was the most influential group and you work through them, and now you are telling us that that's not the case and that they are your biggest challenge. And we're not going to question you. We're going to believe you. And what I'm hearing a lot of in this room is a lot of ideas for things that you might try and helpful like challenges to some of the assumptions or some of the statements that are being shared. And I know that this is not easy work. This is extremely challenging, and basically, if you wanted to, you'd be incredibly justified to just say, never mind, this is too hard. Everywhere we turn, there is a new barrier, and we learn the barrier, and then we turn around, and it's gone, and there's something else in its place. And what I wonder is, like, what do you know, right? Like, if you felt like you would be supported by everyone in this room to do what you think is the most effective or just like the best next step that you could take, what is it that you need as the people who are doing the hard work every day to be able to make progress, even if it's not what we're asking for in this room? Like, you know so much about the context, and you're clearly trying to move forward. I wonder if you have some sort of like, well, this will never be accepted, but if I could have anything I wanted, it would be ... I'm really curious to hear what you wish you could do.
You wanna take that? What? That's our question to them. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's such a nice question, actually, because he goes back to this question. Because you know the same question you just asked, it's the same question we keep on asking ourselves, and it's the same question we wanted to ask everybody. You know, it's really hard to define exactly what's the effectiveness of all these approaches that we, like as a team, sometimes you become overwhelmed. But we thought to ourselves, how about after all these beautiful exchanges that we just had, we then ask everybody else the same question, so that all of us together we can now start thinking like, what's the effectiveness of all these collaborative approaches that we're bringing out? Well, we want the same stakeholders. We want those stakeholders that were pro us last year to stay pro us today, even if they're not. How do we do this? And what makes those approach effective? You know, like in a morning session, they talked about the collective action. They talked about the collective impact and those collaborative approaches. And that's why we wanted to now have this discussion, all of us, if we can do, I think, probably a group discussion and see how effective are they in situations like ours. Because like if one person stands out and say, yes, I have the answer, I don't think those answers will be enough, you know? Yes. Do you want to take up the session?
I think there was one last question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, colleagues from DRC. I'm from DRC as well, but I'm in the central part, in the Kasai region, a little bit different from the eastern region. You know, DRC is a continent. And so we just met here. We did not even know that we came together here. In the Kasai region, we've just finished the 7 years program of the RIFSA, and we've built around 240 water points. And in some of those water points, during the last 4 or 5 years, some are still working with just community-based management. And one of the reasons that I think needs further research and more analysis, I'm sharing just based on what we observed during the project. One reason that some of those community-based management are working is because of the traditional leader and the cohesiveness of the community. If the community is less cohesive, like from Eastern, I understand there are really many clans coming in, moving in and out. But in the Kasai, they've been neglected for decades, and so it's more stabilized. There are more group of clans under one leader, traditional leader. And everything that we bring, even if training on, life cycle costing or O&M to 2 or 3 people from the community, they bring it back to the leader. And they have this committee of wise, Comité des Sages, where there's some head of clans or different groups that are always coming together to discuss issues in the community. I think we need to explore more those traditional form where there is an issues of mismanagement of fund in the committee. They come up they come and discuss in that committee of WISE. If there is issues of between clans, like someone has been shouting during the water distribution because there was a long queue or something like this, it come back to discussion around that platform. So that's something that we may need to explore a little bit more instead of just NGO coming and not really understanding that there is already some dynamics that is working in some of this community. And we learned that from the last Ebola response, where the community says, no, stop. NGOs and all of you is coming here without telling us what to do instead of including us in the discussion, really stop. So we saw that. So now I think during this research, during this conference, I heard some timid voice about what the community of users are saying, what the local communities, what are the local governance that already existing traditionally, are we exploring them? Because they have been working and they have been dealing with all their issues in the past, but we are just coming as an external, bringing some ideas. Yeah, just to help reflect a bit.
Thank you so much. I don't know whether I answered your question correctly.
Yeah, about involvement in the government and how you incentivize
Okay. Yeah, actually, most recently, we also started bringing in the national government all the way from Kinshasa because it kind of builds ownership. People stop feeling like it's the project, or the USAID activity that is actually bringing the issues about the water law, and they feel it's their own government that is, driving the agenda. So from the national level to the province to the local level, we try as much as possible to involve the government. And I keep saying that if things were easy, everybody could do them. You really need to be persistent. So we are trying to really persist and look for ways and means. And in another few years, it's going to be so different. We'll come back here and tell the story, and it's going to be all good, I believe. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm called Kalinda. I work for the government of Uganda, and we are neighbors with DRC. And I think what has been shared is very, very interesting. Maybe a few things that I can comment on, which you already mentioned. We have a program we work on with the DRC on the border with Uganda, and we utilize the leadership in Kinshasa to come and actually talk with the people so that they can actually be supported and made to understand that whatever you are doing in the best interest of the people, but is following the policies and laws. I know it's not easy, because as you said, DRC is very big. Getting people from Kinshasa to come to that eastern part is not easy, but I think investing in that so that the people can see that you are not just coming in as donors just to support them and go away, but to know that you are supporting government. Because governments, by their nature, that's their work. You are supporting government. So not involving government will get people to have a feeling that you have just come, maybe you want to exploit them, or you are taking advantage of them. I think there is also something we need to change in our work. Many times we go to the people and say they are beneficiaries. And the moment somebody knows he's a beneficiary, then he's also going to sit back and receive. I think we need to change our approach and terminology. This feeling of I'm a beneficiary, it means you are bringing something and I should receive, and you don't expect me to contribute anything. I think we need to work with the people. And I think she mentioned the issue of indigenous knowledge. People have survived. People have moved on. They have managed it. I think we need to change our narrative and engage the people, respect them, listen to them, so that they know that they are part of the movement. Many times we come and tell them what we need to do, they need to do. I think also engaging different stakeholders, the religious institutions, the cultural institutions, those people that associate with the communities on a day-to-day basis, so that they assure us. I know it's not easy, and also avoiding this element of getting those who are noisy and then they capture the rest of the people. Because it is very easy to get the opinion leaders and then they hold you and hold you at ransom. I've seen there are some areas where you cannot do, in Somalia, for example, you cannot do any work unless you have gone through brokers. They are the ones who allow you to reach the people. So again, maybe as we work with the people, we need to be conscious of the fact that you can get people who take advantage. And whatever you do is in their interest. But it's not easy, even in a situation where there are no conflicts. Coordination is a challenge. So I can only say, just move on. You cannot solve it, but just move on. Don't give up. That's the way to go. I don't think we are going to solve the problem. We're already having challenges where there are no conflicts. So what about this situation? So just keep moving. Keep moving and you get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's clap for Dr. Kalist.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the encouragement.
You want to take up the activity? How do we do this? Yeah? Okay, so that's good.
We have three questions that we need you to contribute to, and this is the first one, and the second one is
So the second one is divided into two.
yeah, the second one is divided into actually 3 questions. And the first one is like, what stood out for you? Like what, and I think a lot has already been said during the discussion, maybe just summarizing that. And this is really, if you'd like us to go into small groups and really like see what stood out. And then the other one is, what hypothesis can we make from this? And similar experience for those of you who've been working in rural WASH. The patterns, the hypotheses, the conclusions. And finally, what actions actually make sense for people like us working in the kind of environment we're working in, and maybe what do you feel we should have done differently? And I think those things are already coming out in the discussion. So I don't know how we want to do this. Like maybe have people on this side in group 1, like the first question, just discussing among yourselves, and then maybe somebody really like giving us an overview of the points you have found. And maybe from here, this side can actually do these questions. Let me see, is there another question? Okay. So this, okay. So if you want to move to the question that you prefer, so this side can do the second part of the questions. The second slide, yeah, 1 and 2, what and the so what. And finally, this side, what should we have done differently? I think that would really be helpful. And the way we do this is just discussion, and maybe one person really like speaks up for the group. Yeah, and then we all have a session where we can probably just thrash out any issues that come up. For like 10 minutes only?
Yes. 10 minutes.
Thank you. I hope there were three questions. Ah, okay. Okay. Yeah, we should be, yeah, all of us. Yeah. Which one do you want? Which one do you want? Which one do I want? What should we have? Yeah, I'll be in that group. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we got running out of time, and if you have somebody in your team that will want to restitute to everybody else, we have like 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so which group wants to go first? Your group? Who's talking from that group? She made some good points. I think she should. Yeah, you made some valuable points. You should talk. Go ahead. You made some good points. I think you should share it with. Those were good points. So it will be great to share all with everybody. Yeah. Yeah, we are like. Yeah. Okay. Let's go.
So our question was, so what? And we asked a couple of questions around the work you guys are doing in the different areas, but also what are some of the struggles that you are facing at bringing the different stakeholders together. But one of the things that came up was the fact that obviously the sustainability of some of the infrastructure that is put, and that's where the bottleneck might be and where you're trying to explore. But one of the things, the point that we mentioned was that communities are smart. So when communities come into different conversations with development organizations or humanitarian organizations, they also understand their power and they want to keep their power. And so you need to come into in that context knowing that you're not coming with the solutions in a way, but you're coming with some alternatives. And I think if you come with that mentality, then you can leverage some of the powers. And one of the examples that we made was the fact that in the DRC context, there's a water law and there's different responsibilities for government and communities, and also the different committees that already operate in the different provinces. They don't want to lose their power. But I think the point that we made lastly, I'm trying to figure out how did we get there, was that communities know as soon as you, in our experience in South Africa, this is what we've picked up, as soon as they know you implement a one-to-one service, they also know the risk of financial costs that they have to incur. And they know the risk of maintenance of that particular infrastructure. And so we need to be very careful about proposing solutions that in the long run might have adverse impact on the community. So a lot of the times in informal settlements where we work, communities don't want a one-on-one service because they know as soon as a person has their own tap and their own toilet, they have to pay for their water. Again, that's a problem in terms of increasing the inequality gap, because now you're starting to create and have and a have not. Because some people can pay for the water and some cannot. And one of the suggestions where I think, I don't think it's perfect, but I think the South African government has done well, is to also establish a threshold of who pays for what and how much your earnings, or basically where you fall in the economic ladder, so that people still have the security of saying, yes, we want infrastructure, we will take care of the infrastructure, but if it breaks, at least the municipality will still take care of it. And so maybe the negotiations within the different stakeholders' relationships could be around that. And I think what we were saying is that communities are smart. Like, they go into these different spaces and they know exactly what they want to get out of it, and they will try to bargain as much as we can. And I think we need to be open to some of those when we're negotiating and engaging with the different stakeholders. Also, government is smart. They don't want to incur infrastructure that is going to increase their class assets by 5 billion, yet they don't have money to manage that infrastructure. So it's just being aware of the different moving parts. Yes, we're doing something good by providing donor funding and humanitarian responses, but there are real fears that sit within communities and within municipalities that make that difficult, not because people don't want to. People have been bitten before also.
All right, thank you so much. That was good. Thank you. Next group. Yeah.
Okay, so I will summarize a bit about our discussion, and then I do want to give an opportunity for anyone in the group to expand upon their points if there's anything that the folks would like to add more detail to. So we talked a bit about some experiences from Haiti and other emergency conflict contexts that might be relevant to this work. One point that came up was leveraging traditional leaders as key sources of information and detail for stakeholder engagement, stakeholder mapping, convening stakeholders, kind of as that process develops, ensuring that traditional leaders are used as and are involved as key sources of information, given how much they know about those informal rules and ways of working. Also recognizing that laws and policies, for example, the water law and a lot of what we are relying on in DRC may have been developed and might have been part of processes that didn't always account for, or couldn't just account for community preferences, differences in levels of community engagement across the country. It's difficult for us to understand the context of just how in line that law and the policy framework we're working within was able to account for community preferences and needs. So just recognizing that. Another point that came up was accounting for population growth and flows of people, recognizing that the urban and peri-urban centers that we're often working in or focusing on being slightly more stable than a lot of the more rural parts of the regions where we're operating results in flows of folks who are being displaced from their homes often. And that, design not only of infrastructure, but also of the market systems, for example, that we're setting in place need to be able to account for that. We can't necessarily just design, for example, a piped water network to account for a specific population of folks that just live in that area at any one given time. Also recognizing whose turf is where and designing what we're doing to work for everyone kind of within those formal and informal rules. And also investment in the team, empowering everyone on our team. And these were kind of some specific recommendations for the sanitation work on the project, but I think do apply more broadly. Anyone want to expand on those? That was a fairly quick summary of the discussion, but.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And the last one?
Okay, I think we might be over time, so I'll try to be quick. I'm Christy from CDC Emergency Watch Team, and we were talking about kind of the now what makes sense for the future, what should we do differently based on what we've learned from this. We talked about a lot of different things, some of which have already been covered by other speakers, but just the importance of continuing to work with local systems and building trust, and just that by staying there, even through some of the kind of ups and downs of stability, really builds trust within communities of different partners. So just the importance of that. We did talk about, I think it was Patrick who used the term oscillating stability, which I think is just good description, and just the challenges of implementing at kind of the intersection between humanitarian and development work. And so thinking about that going forward, and also linked to what you all were saying in this first group that spoke, just kind of the cost piece, who pays for what, where do people fall in the economic ladder, and how do we engage stakeholders around that. We talked about tariffs and sliding scale and kind of who picks up some of those costs. And Nancy shared an example that I thought was just a great kind of little anecdote to share how some of this kind of knowledge sharing can happen. Some folks were invited from one community, people that were identified as people of influence from different groups, to go kind of on a field trip to see how this can work, and to see a community-based model that's a few steps ahead of them, to see what they can work towards. And I think that was just a good consideration for work done in the future as well. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much all for that. We took notes and we really appreciate your input. Like I was saying, this exercise will help us to improve how we engage with our stakeholders. And we invite you for tomorrow's session, which will be at 3:30, yeah, in the Red Bug. And that one will focus especially on the market model. Because right here we're just trying to talk about the holistic aspect of it. But tomorrow we will really go in deep details about the studies that we did and the models that we're trying to implement in some of those zones. So that's it. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Informal settlements. So it's at 1:30 at Red Bar. If you are interested in informal confusion, anything about
Thank you so much.